wasn't my choice to be an alcoholic.
Yeah.
But it's my choice to be sober and do the work so that I feel better, so that I can understand what other people are going through too.
Welcome back to the PMR podcast. My name is Mitch. I'm an addict alcoholic. This is episode 61. Super excited for this one today. I have a special guest on. His name is Skip. He is a friend of ours, and special thank you to the Vic James Center for sponsoring this episode, helping us with the studio. We have Nova in here as well. Always very grateful and thankful for you to be here. We'd be lost without you. But without further ado, Skip.
What's up?
Happy to have you in here.
I'm grateful to be here, Mitch. Thank you for asking me.
Of course. And we had Zach on a couple weeks ago, and he speaks very, very highly of you. And then I met you, I think about 2 weeks ago. And just super excited to talk with you, talk about recovery, and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be here. And Zach's an awesome dude. I had dinner with him last night.
How's he doing?
He's doing really well.
Yeah.
He just got 3 years in recovery, and he's sponsoring dudes. He's getting it done.
Yeah, I love Zach. He only known him for like a month now, but like...
Oh, really?
Yeah. It feels longer because when he came on, we had like a beautiful episode talking with him and Andrew, and then he's been sending me like morning readings pretty much every single day, which is awesome. He does that. Yeah, I love those. And like, he's just a really, really good dude. You can tell. Yeah,
we just had his 3-year... we went up to Pismo and rode ATVs to celebrate his 3-year anniversary, and dude loved it. He was talking about it last night, and I loved it. It was just a gorgeous day. It's one of those things that just happen in recovery.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where guys get together and just have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. I've only been on an ATV one time, and then I've been on a dirt bike once and almost crashed off of the side of a hill. So
yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, I think I need more practice.
Yeah, well, up there at Pismo, there's some beautiful dunes, and they rent them, and it's just a good day.
Yeah.
It's a good day.
That sounds dope.
Yeah, it's fun.
But can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Just
Yeah.
As much or as little as you'd like in terms of recovery and where you're at now.
Yeah, so I got sober. I found the program at the age of 38. I mean, my father was sober at the time.
Yeah.
And, things just weren't going my way. I'm 60 now, so I'm 22 years in recovery. My sobriety date's July 17th of 2001. I was blessed with fantastic sponsorship. I could name them. Milton Dykes was the first one. He's unfortunately passed. Ken W., awesome, lives up in Carmel now. Jerry D., who lives still in Los Angeles and is married like 56 years, I think, and still have dinner with him and his wife regularly. And then my current sponsor, Griff P., who lives in Florida, who's got 40 years. So, I mean, like, there's some giant footsteps to try and follow in.
Yeah.
And, I sponsor as many guys as I can. I'm constantly doing steps. I don't know if that means I'm one of the sicker than others that just has to do more work, but I just get a lot of joy out of it. And, I also do some volunteer stuff. I started sponsoring guys at the Salvation Army in Santa Monica on 11th Street, and now I'm teaching a couple classes in there. Currently, it's anger management and setting up for success for guys who are about to graduate. And, it's pretty rudimentary fundamentals about how to get employed. We do interviewing role play, and we do, how to dress. Yeah. And then I also counsel a few guys in there as a volunteer. Still sponsor guys. Yeah, so my life just revolves around recovery, and I don't know if some people will judge that as like a crutch. It's so sad. When my father first got sober, I used to say, "Oh, another crutch," And now for me, I get it. I get the joy that he used to have when he was working the program. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah,
yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's interesting. I've heard a couple people that have had parents that were in recovery, and then they found recovery too.
Yeah, for sure. It's a family illness.
Yeah. How was that experience? Did he do any brain Jedi mind tricks on you? Did you like upon reflection where it was like he said something and it was like, oh,
It's funny that you asked that. He used to. I mean, when I was at UCSB, he was living in Santa Barbara, and he used to invite me to these picnics and stuff, and I would go. And it was so. I was 20, living at UCSB was on the top 10 party schools at the time.
right.
I don't know if that was because of me and my fraternity, but I'm sure we had something to do with it. And he would invite me to these things, and I would just be like, oh, this is just agony, just painful. To be at a beach on a beautiful day with a bunch of people who are talking about something I didn't understand at all, virtue, service, gratitude, humility. It just was a foreign language to me at the time. So I was like, dude, this is not for me. And of course, 18 years later, I was calling him going, hey, man, I get it. I'm never going to have any more fun. I'm never going to laugh again. I thought when I stopped drinking, my life was over. And what's funny about that is I didn't really enjoy my life. When I drank, it was fun for a short period of time, and then things would go off the rails, and I'd have to get a new job. I'd have to get new friends. I mean, I really was a train wreck once I started drinking. Yeah. I think that day when I called him, he just said to me, he goes, you have no idea how long I've waited for this phone call. And I was like, okay, what do I do? Are you my sponsor? And he's like, no, I'm your dad.
Yeah.
And he's passed now. He passed sober, and I still have, the big book he gave me that, says, to my son, with much love, your father. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a gift, to be able to know that I could call him, even though we struggled so much. First we struggled with his alcoholism, and then we struggled with my alcoholism. And then towards the end, we were both sober, and I think he passed when I had like 10 years. Damn. And the one thing I kind of regret, Mitch, not to go on and on about this, but I never got to hear him share from the podium, and I would have really loved that. Yeah. He gave me my 1-year cake, took me to my first meeting, but I would have really loved to hear him share. And I really love when I see father-sons or brothers speak. At Bread and Roses, there's a thing going on right now where they're having brothers speak a lot, or father-sons, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it really brings people back together.
Yeah, I can see that. And I hear you on the that regret piece. I can understand that, but I think the beautiful part was, having a book from him and stuff like that. And he got to see you hit 10 years. I can't even imagine that. That's a miracle,
It is. It's a miracle.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I've been using miracle a lot, and some people don't like it, but.
It made me hesitate there for a second, right? Because, but then again, what is a miracle, right? It's just, I don't know what the definition is, but I'm sure it's something that seems magical and unexpected.
Yeah. And
getting sober and having a sober family and becoming a family again is certainly magical and unexpected for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Some families are disastrous. Our family was disastrous prior to my father getting sober.
Yeah. When do you remember when he got sober?
It was when I was in college.
Okay.
Yeah. So by then, I was off to the races. Started drinking at 11, and then the bad move. I got an open container ticket driving one night, at 16, and so my parents were like, "Oh, you have to start paying for your car insurance." So I started working in a restaurant, right? Yep. So I just was drinking every single night.
Yeah.
Because that's what you do in restaurants when you're 16.
I remember getting a couple tickets like that or arrests, and it was always a bunch of close calls that were easily I could rationalize them, or I just remember thinking real high of myself in terms of how I could mix things around and get over on people, and then there came a point where all of these experiences kind of all bounded up on top of each other into one, where I finally was like, I think I need to get some help.
Well, I'm assuming you got sober really young.
I got sober at 20.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was on one of the as of it stands right now, I've never had a legal drink,
That's awesome.
It's been beautiful, life-changing, really. But yeah, I went through, because we were talking on the phone a couple of days ago, so I wanted to ask you a little bit. I went through the treatment treatment cycle, if you will, like into an inpatient and then outpatient, and then found 12-step programs. Actually, I mean, I found them while I was in inpatient. We would get on this. We had a van at the treatment center, and it was called the Druggy Buggy.
Nice.
And we'd go to meetings in that, which is, looking back, really fun. But working in treatment now, it's kind of been a trip. And you were talking a little bit about working, or can you explain it a little bit more? You said something about working in treatments or getting your KDAC maybe for trauma.
Yeah. From the conversation. Yeah. I'm actually, I've never been to treatment.
Oh, okay.
I just went straight to AA.
Yeah.
Straight to 12-step program.
You're good.
And yeah, thanks. What was my point there? It was because I was working. I've had a daughter half time, so I couldn't go away.
Yeah.
I didn't go straight to it. I took a month. I called my father, and he's like, "You got to go to a meeting," and I'm like, "Okay," right away. A month later, I finally went.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm taking classes in counseling. The current class I'm taking is called Intentional Interviewing in Counseling, and it's really amazing. We do role play therapy sessions. And it's me, the 60-year-old guy, and a bunch of 20-year-olds, because it's at a junior college in Santa Barbara, at Santa Barbara City College. I go up there on Monday nights, and it's just interesting to see how people respond, and then also what my what's the word I'm looking for? My kind of default assumptions that I make about people who are 20. So it's been very informative. But yeah, I'm getting my certification in trauma coaching, which I'm really excited about, because I think the current thinking about addiction is that it stems from trauma. I know there's a lot of family stuff involved, and I believe that it's either genetic or learned behavior. Somehow we learn it, right, as our mechanism for solving our discomfort.
Yeah.
But the current thinking is that it all stems from trauma. And I actually went out to this place. Are you familiar with the Meadows out in Arizona? A sponsor of mine had me go out there and do a week-long course out there in therapy called Survivor One, and it's to deal with the trauma you had as a child. I guess it's a bunch of things. Some of it is for childhood trauma, some of it's for current trauma, but mine was for childhood trauma. And we were in this room, and we were talking about how it affects you currently, right? And I was like, okay, I'm 60 years old. I'm over. I don't still feel anything from when my mother and father used to fight in the kitchen and threaten each other and all that. And I was so wrong. I was so wrong. It's like we went through these interesting ego states that people create for themselves, and mine, because of that, was like this invulnerable, expert, smarter than everybody else, perfectionist ego state. And what that creates is I have a distance. I have like a moat around me so that people actually can't get close to me, And it's weird because I share all the time in meetings and speak, and I share about pieces of my life, but I only share about pieces of my life. I don't actually get vulnerable to the degree that someone could be close to me, to have even that personal intimacy in a non-romantic relationship. And I'm not in a romantic relationship either. I've never been successful at one. I mean, I've had 2 marriages, both failed relatively quickly. It's just one of those things where, because I want to protect myself from something that happened to me as a child, I'm incapable, or at least less capable than a lot of people, at being intimate with someone as an adult.
Yeah. So
there's that trauma, right? And trauma can be anything from, actual physical violence to, like, let's say your parents were trying to work extra hard to make extra money to send you to a really good school, but you felt that they weren't there for you, so you felt abandoned, and now you feel unloved.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's a vast amount of work going on right now about trauma and how to work on it, and I'm just excited, to be able to learn, because I'm learning about me at the same time I'm learning how to help the guys I sponsor, help the guys I counsel, and potentially coach people on how to overcome it. I know it's got to be incredibly difficult, though, because, again, at 60, it still affects me.
Yeah.
No,
that's fascinating. That's super cool that you're doing that. it's something I've been kind of nerding out to a lot on trauma, its relation to addiction and stuff like that. I'm super interested into like each person infers trauma differently too. It's like a term that I've been throwing around a lot because sometimes when people say trauma, the assumption is like, oh, you were, domestic violence or it was this over the top thing, which it can be obviously, but it can also be like, I love that you mentioned, parents are working and they're not there. The parents would say that, and they did too. I'm not trying to cast judgment or anything, but like, if the child feels alone or isolated or neglected, that's how the child feels. And it's really interesting how the brain will protect, especially when you're younger. From what I've like read and talked with some people about, like in that developmental stage, the brain will protect you, as to the max level. Like it's going to protect you any way it can. And there's a lot of ways that it does it too. With like, I was just talking with Nova last week about EMDR. And your brain can wipe out experiences like completely,
or create them,
right?
Yeah,
that's true. And the other thing that I was going to say too is a lot of, if you have that early childhood trauma, you have those early coping skills, which then turn into like drug use. If it doesn't go addressed, it goes into drug use in adolescent area, because that's like the coping skill that it develops into, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, I think that's what people are saying right now is that that's how we numb out, so to speak. It's like, but again, is it genetic? Is it because, okay, so for instance, when I first drank, I blacked out the first time I ever drank.
Yeah.
The first time I ever drank, I blacked out. So there had already been abuse, so to speak, in the family. There was domestic violence in my family. But that doesn't mean that my body has that allergy and that inability to process alcohol like a normal body, or the fact that I couldn't stop putting it in my body even when I knew I was out of control.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it still happened. So for me, it's still a matter of, is it genetic? Is it that my body was just I don't know, that obsession of the mind and the allergy of the body, it was there immediately for me the moment I did it, and even though it was a terrible experience at a family wedding, I wanted to do it again right away.
Yeah.
So that's an abnormal reaction to a really bad experience. I mean, if it's like you get in a car crash and you go, holy shit, that car crash was terrifying. I'm so grateful I survived. I can't wait to do it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's kind of like I've talked with my friends before about like a propensity thing too, that everyone has like, a percentage, if you will, of like addictive qualities or an addiction level. And certain traumatic events or life experiences can bring that up or bring that down. And I've talked with people before that in meetings that didn't start drinking or using until they were like 30, 32, 33. And then they unlocked this, thing that was just kind of laying there. And the qualities were there the whole time. So I think it's like, I've been really interested looking into, instead of like labeling people as like depressed or anxious or an addict or an alcoholic, I feel like everyone has it to a level,
I would agree with that. Yeah.
And yeah, I think that makes more sense to me,
I think you're right about it. And I think that because we're all human, right? And we all have frailties or I don't know, I guess that's the word frailties, dysfunctions or character defects, however you want to. We all have things we obsess about.
Yeah.
We all have desires. How about that? We all have desires, right? And I think a lot of times desires get in the way of people being fulfilled. Whether it's to have a lot of money, whether it's to have, status, whether it's to have whatever. I don't think you need to be an addict or an alcoholic to have those desires and sometimes go off the rails. I mean, I know a lot of people who, will watch television shows and then that's how they decide where they're eating all the time and that they only want to eat at, these restaurants that they see influencers eat at. And I feel like that's a dysfunction the same as someone who gambles all the time and can't control their gambling or can't control their eating or can't control their shopping. It's just something that fulfills them that's actually something outside of themselves, as opposed to just being comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
And I could be completely wacky, but I've seen it where just people get obsessed with television shows even.
Yeah.
And then that's all they think about and all they talk about. And it's uncomfortable.
Well, that's exactly what it is. It's like anything that can take me outside of myself, because for me, at a certain point, and even sometimes now, just being me when it was extremely uncomfortable, and I needed to get away from that. So anything that provided that the fastest and to the max level, I was going to do. And that was comfortable. That was more comfortable. It was way more comfortable for me to be outside of myself than it was for me to sit there and face all that stuff.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, it's like all the inward work and inward looking is the hardest stuff. We were just talking about that with Nova last week too. It's like,
and it's slow.
Yeah, there's nothing immediate about it.
It's slow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know we did these things that are like, and there's actually studies about it now where, if you write a gratitude list, I think the study I saw, it's like if you write a gratitude list once a week, you know what I mean? If at the end of like a year, you feel better about yourself than you did at the beginning of the year, whereas people who don't do it feel about the same. Some will feel even worse because they've gotten a year older, right? And then we do it in recovery. We go like, okay, well, you write 10 things you're grateful for every day. And that, I see people who do that and then they start to feel better and then they just stop doing it. And it reminds me, my first sponsor, Milton, always used to say that, alcoholics are people who find something that works and then don't do it.
Yep.
And I mean, that's it, right? Because we go, oh, yeah, I was going to meetings and I felt great.
Yep.
Then I got a girlfriend, I stopped going to meetings and now I feel like shit.
Yep.
What's wrong?
Yep.
And you're like, well, really? What's wrong? It's not hard to figure it out.
Yeah. But it's hard to see it too. I was stuck in that cycle for a long time, honestly, until the last year and a half that I start trying to work my program consistently on a daily level. I think my first 4 years, honestly, was in and out.
Yeah.
In, everything's good. All right, I'm out. Everything's good. All right, I'm out. I mean, I used to make the joke of if I was really feeling terrible and not doing well, I'd go to a meeting, or go to 2 meetings, and that would fill up my meeting bar, if I will. And then I'd wait till it get right back down to here and then go sit in the back of a meeting, and then leave.
Yeah. That's so common, man.
That stopped working,
Yeah.
That stopped working. And it was very noticeable too. I was I was close, Yeah. And so I made a big pivot, thankfully, with a sponsor here, and just tripling and quadrupling down on my recovery, and that helped me a lot.
I think that's the moment though. That pretty much describes my early sobriety. You asked me if I could go to mostly men's meetings, and I do. And early sobriety, because I felt so shitty about myself, and now I couldn't drink and use I think when I drank and would go off the rails, it would create all these problems that I then had to solve, right? So that kept me occupied and busy. I didn't have to sit there and think about myself and how dissatisfied I was with my life at 38. And so when I started going to meetings, I was going to these big mixed meetings, and I figured, I'll find a woman or something that'll make me feel better, because I got a lot of approval in my youth from girlfriends. Let's be honest. I mean, my mom was kind of I love my mom. She's still alive, and I try and call her every day now. But she was a workaholic. So she was gone all the time. As a matter of fact, it's weird. I hadn't called my mom for a long time. I'd kind of written her off in a way. And then just last week, I called her, and I was trying to explain to her why my daughter and I haven't been to visit. And I was saying, you know how it is. We're really busy with work. I said, and you know how it is because you were always working. And she's just said, yeah, and I really regret it. I really regret that I spent so much time in my office and not with you guys. And I'm telling you, Mitch, it's so weird. I've called her every single day since that day, because all of a sudden it just was this forgiveness. I felt empathy for her because she was sick, and that's why she did that. Just me with my illness, right? It was certainly it wasn't my choice to be an alcoholic. Yeah. But it's my choice to be sober. And do the work so that I feel better, so that I can understand what other people are going through too. And it was this weird, just that admission. My mom's she's not about coming clean on things that have happened. Everything's a new story.
Yeah.
And that admission on her part has I just forgave her in the moment.
Yeah.
It was just like, good Lord. Yeah.
To that point, forgiveness is a change of perspective. That's been my experience.
I know what we were talking about. Sorry to cut you off.
No,
you were talking about your early sobriety and going kind of doing enough to get by.
Yeah.
In early sobriety, I would go to these mixed meetings trying to find someone give me a sense of value by thinking I'm cute or charming or whatever. And dude, it just wasn't working. And in 6 months, I was like, this stuff is just not for me.
Yeah.
And oddly, some guy came up to me randomly and he goes, you don't look like you're doing very well with this. And I was like, no. Yeah. And he goes, you should go to this men's stag meeting. And I was like, why the fuck would I want to hang out with a bunch of guys? Mm-hmm. I don't like them. They're, I compete with them, whatever. But I went to Bread and Roses when I was down on Rose. And I was 20 minutes into this meeting. I was like, oh my God, this is where I need to be. This is home. And then I saw that guy again and he goes, how was it? And I go, it was the best thing ever. And he goes, there's a daily meeting on the promenade called Mario's at noon. So I started going there. It was a lunch meeting. It wasn't in the directory, but it was a lunch meeting. And that's where I met all my sponsors, to be honest. All 4 of them that I've had so far were all in that meeting. And it's just been the thing that made my life worth living, really, is knowing these men, hearing what they were going through, sharing what I was going through. They became my moral compass. What I would do is when I was out in the real world, I would go, okay, if I do this, what I'm thinking of doing right now, and I go back and share it in front of those guys, are they going to pull me aside after and go, hey, man, you should call us first? And a lot of my thinking was that way. They would be like, that's not the best idea. Yeah. Or would they pat me on the back? And so I started going, okay, I only want to do things where they would pat me on the back. And it's like Milton used to say, if you want to have self-esteem, do esteemable acts. Yeah. So that's kind of what got me fired up about it. Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I think I had a similar relationship with women early in my recovery because I got sober at 20. And my circumstances, I was kicked out of my college, or almost kicked out of college, but kicked off my swim team. My college said basically, like, if you don't get help, you're done. Mm-hmm. And a lot of other things were stacked up behind that. So when I went to treatment and tried to come back to school, I was 9 months out. So I had 9 months of recovery and just living with my mom. When I got back to school, I was in and out of the program. I was a pink cloud, so I was doing meetings in the town that I was in, but when I went back to school, all the meetings were like a lot of old people, and I was 20, and I just couldn't. I had trouble relating to them. I was in a town called Granville, and the closest area with like younger meetings was Columbus. So I got a girlfriend, and that made me feel better. She was great, and I stopped doing the meetings because everything's fine, and then I repeated that cycle for like 3 girlfriends in a row into my like 4 years into sobriety. Just like searching for like feeling loved, feeling cared for, all of those things. And it never worked for long. Approved of. Yeah. Feeling approved of. Yeah. I actually, in the last like year, I did a lot of work on myself in terms of being out of relationships and trying to just focus on where's my need to talk to or, have a girlfriend or have, people that I'm talking to. Where's that like really coming from? My sponsor and I had me do a lot of like sexual ideal inventories and when we went over all of my relationships, which was fun. And like really trying to get to a place where I was more comfortable with myself, which I've continued to work on. But I say all that to say that I met my sponsor at a men's stag when it was like I was real close to. I think my plan was I was going to smoke weed and see how it went first. I think I was at like 5 years sober, and I was like, I'm going to smoke weed and see how it goes if this meeting doesn't work. And I went to this one meeting, and it was a men's stag. Called The Great Fact, and changed my life. It was like a group of like 40, 50 men, all had what I wanted, all had prolonged recovery, very welcoming, very loving. Didn't talk in there for like 4 months, just petrified of them. And then I've been going there for like 2.5, almost 3 years. And the men in that room changed my life. I grew up without a father too. Okay.
And my 7 years is November 11th. And I've already, I tell them all the time, but like they actively have acted as father figures, without them knowing really, for the last like 3 years. So, I don't know where I was going with that either, but I mean, it's just beautiful.
I love that. That's just wonderful. It's wonderful, and I get, we're similar in that way, and you're similar with Zach in that way too. And he was talking about that last night with me, is that his father figure passed, but he found men in the rooms who, give him that guidance. And I think it goes back to, I know that we live in this world where everyone is scattered and mobile and running around and busy and distracted, and if you go back to how humans started in these tribal situations, we've just recreated this tribal stuff with these meetings, where we have elders,
right.
and they have wisdom and they share it when asked, they don't pressure you to accept it. But you can go, hey, you know what? I was basically an adolescent at 38. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because I didn't have any experience of growing up. I love this joke. People go, I didn't have a great childhood, but I had a long one. And because once you start drinking, the clock stops on you maturing.
Yeah.
So when I got here at 38, I basically was like 11. And then I learn from watching these other men, because they actually live by the principles, which is what you're talking about, and they became my surrogate fathers, to where I would be like, I'll just go back to Milton again. My father was a violent, angry guy. Mm-hmm. He drank. The story in the family goes something like this. He grew up. He was the oldest kid on a farm in Nebraska, and he grew up and was gay, and but couldn't be gay because that's just not what you did. At his age. So he married my mom. He was Catholic. We're all Catholic. Married my mom, and then had kids, and then hated himself and us for it. Right. And all his best friends were gay guys, and they were all wonderful dudes. One of my favorite people of all time was one of my father's friends, who was a hairdresser in Beverly Hills. His name was Jacques de la Greek, and he would say, "Hey, I'm your anti-flaming Lulu," and was just a wildly funny, interesting human being. I didn't know what gay was then, you know what I mean? So I never judged it. I was just like, okay, this is just something that people are. And when I was 16, my father stood up at the dinner table and he goes, "I have an announcement to make. I'm a homosexual." And it was really confusing to me, because at that point I knew what it meant, and I knew that my dad had kids. So I was like, wait a second, you're married to mom and you have kids. You can't possibly be a homosexual. Yeah. And he goes, oh, yeah, you're right. I just mean that I like to have men friends. And, I've always felt bad about that. Like, I think can I say cock-blocked on the... I think I cock-blocked my father's life on that, and he was afraid to actually try to come out, and I stopped him. But just because I was innocent, my innocence of lack of understanding. Yeah. But he was angry about it, that he couldn't be himself. And then when he would drink, that anger would come out, and it was directed at us because we were what were stopping him from being who he was. So he was. I learned violence from him. And, I would yell and have rage, probably a rageaholic, I suppose. I was angry at everybody when I got to AA. And then I got this sponsor named Milton, who just had a simple solution for everything. He'd be like, hey, how to not get cut off in traffic? Let him in. I'd be like, yeah, but then they win. You know what I mean? Like, I'm racing these cars. They don't know it, but like, I'm competing for my self-esteem on the freeway. Yeah. And he goes, just let him in, man. And now I drive like an old lady. You know what I mean? I get everywhere on time. I'm so relaxed when I get there. Yeah. It's just a different perspective, right? And it was everything like that. I mean, when I got a girlfriend at 7 months, and I was an asshole to her, and I was like, she broke up with me, and I was like, dude, what do? I just say mean things all the time. And he was like, well, say nice things. I was like,
opposite action.
What the fuck are you talking about? If I could say nice things, I would, And he'd be like, all right, well, what do you say? And I told him some of the things I said, and he said, all right, well, instead of that, say this. Instead of this, say that. And I would do it, and I would be like, fuck, I'm really struggling to articulate how I feel at the moment. I would appreciate some space. Yeah. And she would be like, okay. Yeah. It's cool that you asked for it. Yeah. And I would be like, oh my God, magic. that simplicity. But this tribe of elders, and particularly my sponsor, taught me how to be a man.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
So I think that the tribal thing is what really helps us.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, if we don't go, it doesn't work.
Yep. 100%. Yeah.
It's a long story, man. Sorry about
No,
that.
it's beautiful. Meeting makers make it though. 100%.
Yeah. See, as simple as that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I that makes sense to me though. I mean, it feels like my mom just sent me this whole article a couple of days ago about like family trauma or like passed on from generations,
Yeah. It's called toxic shame.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really nuts because most families I know my family we have history of like some pretty messed up stuff in the family. Which I was told pretty early. And I think it's like the big piece about trauma, I think, is like, because it's like this like locked away thing, right? And that's like part of the work that EMDR is, and like working with people going through PTSD and stuff like that. The acceptance part into where it's like, before acceptance, it's understanding, to the best of your ability, your perspective, what happened to you, what happened to them, kind of like an inventory, if you will, but on the traumatic event or the trauma in general. So like a better understanding, and acceptance, and then kind of surrendering to that it had happened, in a release. And it's not as easy as 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, but I've found for me I felt weightlessness from doing that.
The EMDR?
EMDR and just like things that I was carrying that I, was reluctant to admit or was reluctant to release. I haven't got rid of all of it, but some of the big ones that really harbored me, I've had freedom from it, at least to the extent of how it was before. And I didn't know how heavy it was until it was gone either. Like I remember hearing people talk about weightlessness and being free and like all this stuff. And I was like, I hate those guys. Like they're so happy. And like, I hated that. 'Cause I would be in meetings with my, fists clenched, and I'm not doing that. And I don't like you 'cause you do it. And then once I finally like continued to surrender, and I have to surrender on a daily level, even now. But once I finally did, it was like, I mean, I'm sure you've met people, and for me, you're one of those people that when you hear them speak or stuff, it's just like a light,
No,
and of course, and those people, that's who I try to surround myself with now too.
Yeah.
And it's just like some of those people that I've met in meetings and hear them speak, like they say the same things, and there's a reason for that. And for whatever reason, it took me getting hit in the head over 1,000 times to understand that there's a reason why everyone says and is doing the same thing to get that,
Yeah. I mean, it says in the book that defiance is our number one characteristic,
Yeah.
and we are so defiant. I've done the EMDR, and it was very helpful.
Yeah.
I found, and I've been watching in the first class I took. It was about all the different pharmaceuticals and drugs and history of and how they're used and what happens and we got into the study of like ketamine, LSD, psilocybin, and microdosing. And my teacher up at SBCC is 28 years sober, and she's a therapist and an attorney. She's a super smart. I absolutely love her. It's why I drive all the way to Santa Barbara to take these classes. Yeah. And she does microdosing of psilocybin for people with PTSD and depression, and I think I'm a fan of it. I was a mushroom dealer when I was in college.
Yeah.
And so I've macro dosed, and that didn't help. But I think everything I've seen and read about the microdosing of psilocybin and how it reconnects you with humanity.
Yeah.
And it really helps people. It brings that light out in them. So I it's not an advertisement, but
Right.
I think it's worth studying for sure. And I'm a fan of anything that gets people closer to each other. And I think I was talking about this last night. I shared it in a meeting and spoke in a meeting. I struggle with the higher power thing. I struggle with God because I grew up Catholic, and there was, so much, so many contradictions in what was being said versus what I saw in the church. Even my favorite priest of all time in my Catholic grade school went to prison for 30 years for molesting, the boys in the class. So stuff like that, like, here are these men we trust, and they're doing this nefarious, damaging stuff to society. So I did that defiant thing, like, okay, F the Catholic Church, and F spirituality, and F religion, and God, whatever. And so I struggled with that for years until probably about 2 years ago. I was like, okay, well, if there is a God's will, right, what is it? And it's that I behave like a normal human being so that I can engage with other normal human beings, right? Yeah. So I look at my will versus God's will is what's best for Skip, like, versus what's best for the group, right? So, and it's simple for me because I go, okay, what's best for Skip this morning is lay in bed, don't show up, don't be here, F you guys, whatever, you'll figure it out. Because I was tired this morning, right? Yeah. So I'm like, okay, so that thought crossed my mind. I'd be like, okay, that's Skip's will. What's God's will? Show up on time, be authentic, show up on time and be authentic and have a good time. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then whenever I do that, I'm closer to other human beings, which is what we're here for. Yeah. Drinking and using isolates us, right? And so that's when we're isolated and we're thinking about ourselves all the time. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Right? And that's when you have guys kill themselves. Yep. I've known a lot of guys who've jumped off buildings, overdosed, shot themselves. It's a sad place we live in where good human beings feel the need to end their lives because they don't feel connected to anybody. It is that loneliness. And I just got something from UCLA Health, and it talks about how we're the loneliest country in the world because everyone is separating themselves with, I don't want to blame social media or whatever. I think we're just like, if they put rats on Instagram, they'd be on it all the time. You know what I mean? If you put a rat in a cage with cocaine by itself, it does the cocaine. If you put a rat in a cage with other rats and cocaine, they don't do the cocaine. Yeah, they just do rat stuff.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? So it's like if you put human beings who are connected and connecting and enjoying themselves together, we don't act out. Yeah. But if you put me alone in a room with a pile of cocaine, it's probably going to be a problem. Right. You know what I mean? So I'm a fan of anything that gets us closer together, whether it's a higher power, humility, gratitude, and other virtues, or microdosing psilocybin or EMDR. You got to potentially try these things and find out what works. Because if you're feeling alone, that's the killer.
Yeah, 100%. It's feeling a part of and the community piece. And for me, seeing my higher power work through others, I actively challenge myself to see my higher power working through all interactions with all people, which I don't do 100% of the time. But I have been starting to catch myself when I'm not. And one of the guys at my meeting says, every interaction with another human is a spiritual experience. And it says something like that in the book too. So that's that's a challenge to bring that, 24/7. But it is freeing, if you're in a conflict or a troubling situation with someone, trying to be like, my higher power is working through them. It's a trip. For me, it kind of takes that sting away, which I really used to like that. And I'm trying to actively move past that. But when you're talking about the psilocybin, are you talking about that with people that have just trauma or PTSD, or with alcohol or drug backgrounds too?
I'm not sure. I think that is a trauma, PTSD, depression thing. I don't know. I kind of look at this all as the same swimming pool. It doesn't matter what the issue is. It's all treatable. Yeah. Right. I don't know if psilocybin is the right thing for someone who's a addict of psychopharmaceuticals. Yeah. I think even therapy can become an addiction.
That's fair.
So, you know what I mean? I think you got to find the right treatment. And I don't know, maybe this is the wrong forum to talk about psilocybin, but my point was just that, you mentioned EMDR. Yeah. EMDR is a solution for a lot of people. It helped me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Group therapy is a solution for a lot of people.
Yeah.
The meetings are a solution for a lot. You just have to find yours.
I agree.
I think my idea is don't stop exploring. You know what I mean? Obviously, you don't microdose psilocybin on your own. I just saw something. It was like it was an ad on Instagram. I couldn't believe it. It was like these psilocybin gummies that, increase your energy or whatever. And I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
these guys got to stop reading my mind. But
They're going to come for you now.
I'm telling you, man. But yeah, I mean, so anything could be abused or used for benefit, right? And it's just how you approach it.
Yeah.
But definitely, if you're going to do the microdosing of psilocybin, it's got to be under the care of a therapist who has that experience.
Right. I agree.
A professional.
Yeah, it's like program building too. We talk a lot about build your own program.
Yes.
You can take what you like from me, take what you like from him, take what you like, whatever. Find your own program, and that's what I try to do that too. But the gym is, the meetings are, my work is, my friends are, my relationships are. It's all part of my program. This podcast is a big part of my program, and I've had to stumble my way through to get to this point where I've found like one that's been working pretty well. Because I work in treatment, and my company does offer Spravato, which is the company I work for. It's not my company, which is ketamine nasal spray. It's like the Spravato is the brand's name. I've nerded out on that with some of the therapists and stuff, and it scares me.
Yeah, it scares me when you said it.
Yeah.
It's ketamine nasal spray. That's
and it's like
not something I want to have my hands on.
Yeah, it's I've really tried to get out. I used to be like, don't do this and don't do that and don't smoke weed and don't and I was really like always trying to tell everybody how to recover, and that was stupid.
Well, it's not stupid. That's a stage everyone goes through.
Yeah, you think so?
It really, we all go through the stages, right? I mean, when you're on that pink cloud, you want everyone to be sober.
Oh, yes,
it's like,
I did.
even if you're not sober, you should do the 12 steps. They're a miracle. You know what I mean? And then you get to that other stage where it's like, you're going to let people know what they need to do.
Yeah.
Right? I went through one rigorous honesty stage where I thought what it meant was I need to tell everyone exactly what I think about them.
Honesty without compassion is brutality.
Yeah, well, I was brutal. Yeah, but I mean, that's what I thought. So it was just a stage I went through, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, this is not helpful.
Yeah.
Right? I'm in this stage right now that's kind of weird, and it's kind of a little bit what you talked about conflict with others. And I have this new thing where everybody's right all the time. And because I don't know where you come from, I didn't live your life. How can I possibly tell you should be wearing a green sweatshirt instead of a purple one to make it simple, right? Yeah. And I literally have no conflict most of the time. Recently, I had this issue of new neighbors, and I was on a day that I drove home from Santa Barbara. It was late. I'd found out my younger sister was in the hospital. She'd had a heart angiogram to check her heart, and she had to get checked in for triple bypass surgery. Yeah, I had a heart attack last year, and it was really rough. It was rough. So I was freaking out. I was freaking out for my sister.
Yeah.
My older sister had a heart attack too. I mean, so it runs in my family, but I was totally out of my normal self. And when I got home, there was a car in my driveway, and I literally, when they came out to move the car, like 20 minutes later, I was waiting for them, and I was, totally out of my mind. And that whole everybody's right all the time thing, out the window. And I just started yelling. And I was literally yelling at them. I don't know why I'm yelling at you. I'm really embarrassed that I can't stop yelling at you. Like, there was part of me that wanted to be the normal, sane Skip. And there was part of me that had just reverted back to this insane human being, because this powerless thing, which I think I'm really great about all the time for me, when I talked to my sister that day in the hospital, she felt so afraid. She was not used to powerlessness. She's not one of us. So she doesn't use that in her normal life, and she's got a young daughter, and there was so much fear. It really upset me, and I carried that upsetness into my life and totally upset my new neighbors. I haven't seen them since. I feel like I owe them dinner or something, but I mean, I share this story a lot because, like, 22 years sober, I think I have a good program. I go to a meeting almost every day. I sponsor guys, blah, 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 on down the line. And I'm just as capable of doing damage if I'm not right-minded as I ever have been.
Yep.
So it's a precarious thing for us. You know,
Yeah.
we really have to do this. You said on a daily level, on a daily basis for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I hated to hear in the beginning.
Dude, there's so much I hate to hear.
You know,
There's a line in the 12 and 12 that still annoys me every time I read it, where it says, there's something most reasonable people can agree on, that there's plenty wrong with us alcoholics about which plenty needs to be done in order for us to live a contented, sober life. And I'm like, oh, every time I think I'm doing well, I'm like, yes, there's plenty wrong with us and plenty has to be done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact that they say reasonable people believe that, I'm like, oh, what about us unreasonable people? What do we believe?
Yeah. It's true. But, I love it too. You know, I mean, it's so beautiful, beautiful interactions. I wake up most of the time feeling like really, really good. And, I know that comes and goes, but where I'm currently at, I feel like extremely blessed and grateful for my relationships in my life. My work doesn't even feel like work, you know, it's just nuts. How that kind of happens. I think I hadn't really seen
it's science how that
I hadn't
happens.
really seen how it works like this until really in the last year and a half.
Yeah, that's not nuts, man. That's science.
Yeah.
You have practiced the virtues, gratitude, program, all these things that you're doing, and that makes everything feel better.
Yeah,
It does.
it's true.
It's not nuts, and it's not an accident. It's the science of the neuroplasticity of our brains, which is another fascinating thing that we talk about in this class. It's like how our brains get wired to do the wrong thing, you know, when we're actively in our addiction. And then all these things that we do in the program, the steps, gratitude list, being, you know, having humility, working with others, service. I mean, they're doing scientific experiments that show that rewires our brain so that we start feeling good when we do the right thing. Versus how we have done in the past, where I shouldn't say right or wrong, we do good things for people, versus bad things to ourselves and to the people around us. Which, you know, sometimes the worst thing we do to people around us is just to avoid them.
Yeah,
You know, take ourselves out of their lives so that they don't experience the joy they have if we're doing the right thing and hanging out.
yeah,
You know, so what you're doing is the right thing, which is why everything becomes a lot easier.
yeah. That's
You
a
know.
good point.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. So don't say it's nuts.
That's crazy.
That's
Yeah.
just science.
Yeah,
You know, it's a fact of life. The people who do this, like you're talking about, the guys who you saw
yeah,
doing the right thing, and then you start doing it too, and then all of a sudden your life becomes better.
yeah,
And you go, how the fuck does this happen?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's happening because you're doing the right stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you see those guys that don't, and they're like, this program doesn't work for me. You know, I did go to when I was 20, like you, and didn't do the program. So when I did call my dad on that day, I was like, I tried, it doesn't work.
yeah.
And he said, did you do it or just go to? And I was like, well, I just kind of went to. And he's like, yeah, did you ever work a step? And I was like, no.
Yeah,
He goes, well, that's why it didn't work.
yeah,
You know, it's not being there, it's being part of and doing it. You know what I mean? So you're doing it and things are great.
I appreciate that.
No
That's affirming.
mystery.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, the work part, you know, that's what everyone that does get stuck up that I've met and talked with, you know, or doesn't like it or leaves, you know, it's when it gets down to the nitty gritty, you know, there's a certain step that everyone gets to, from my experience, where it's like, all right,
Yeah.
I don't like it, you know?
Yeah.
And I've gained a lot of, my sponsor has taught me, I've learned from him to speak through suggestion, and continue to be a loving, safe place, you know, for all people, regardless of the interaction. And that ups the likelihood of someone coming back, you know, if they do leave, you know.
Yeah, I'm with that. I'm not with the tough. I want to be the kinder, softer, gentler way.
Yeah, because I have a sponsee whose last sponsor was like talking about just like upset with him and like, you're doing this wrong and I'm disappointed in you. And I was like,
That's so lame.
he almost left, bro.
That's so lame.
You know,
Like, that's what we've heard our whole life, right?
right. Yeah.
We've been a failure our whole life, and now we get into something that's supposed to be good for us, and someone tells us I'm a failure again.
Right. That's
Like,
a good point.
really?
Yeah.
No. The fact that you're even trying, that's a win. That's such a win.
I agree.
Yeah, no one should be unkind like that.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to touch on that you were talking about earlier that really related to was that like moat that you were talking about.
It's
I feel like
currently 2 tables wide. But
yeah, I feel like I've been trying to bring it in, but I still have one too. I think like it's scary to let people in. I had a similar. I had no brothers and sisters. I was just raised by my mom. She worked a ton. Very loving, and I love my mom very much. We have a much, much, much better relationship today than when I was using, and even in my early recovery. But I remember I would have experiences of like locking myself in my room, hiding behind stuff. There's experiences like that.
Dude, I literally used to hide in my closet and read books all day.
Yeah. No, I did the same thing. I had like a moment when I was really young with my dog. I've always loved dogs, and we had 3 dogs, and I was like, it's just me and my dog. I remember like it's like stained into my brain, like hiding behind my bed, and I was like, it's just me and my dog, and that's it. And I kind of held on to that, even to this day. Like a self-reliance. Can't trust anyone but me,
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
I have tried to chip away at that, and I definitely have. But that stuff sticks, it really sticks. And it's good and bad, I think.
Well, yeah, it just is what it is, right? And this is why I'm excited about doing this trauma coaching and learning what it does, because I can easily identify it in other people, and I know what mine is. I don't know what to do with it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because it's a safe place for me. I mean, when I was working with this therapist at this Meadows place, and she showed the different ego states, and the one that was invulnerable and all that, and I was like, yes, that's the right one, because I've worked my whole life to attain that, where there's nothing you can do to me, and I'm just safe in my own little bubble. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no, that's not the right one. She goes, you want to be in this middle one where you're vulnerable but have boundaries and all this stuff. And I was like, well, why would I want to be there, man? If I trust you and you let me down, that's a problem for me.
Yep.
And so I don't know the answer to that. Like, I really don't. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I've been single 3 years since my last divorce, and all I've done is more program stuff, which some people probably think is weird, but it's satisfying to me. And it's like I get that it's still being in that expert role, because I'm the sponsor, I'm the teacher, I'm the counselor. You know what I mean? So that's safe for me, right? I can be of service and still be invulnerable. And I don't know how to be anything else at the moment. And I also go, okay, this is a terrifying excuse for me. I go, yeah, I'm 60. So why would I learn any new behavior now? Right? And actually in this class I'm in, this 20-year-old young lady was role playing as my therapist, and I'm the client. We do these role plays in this class, and I brought that up. I'm like, okay, why should I take this class? Why should I get my master's? Why should I do this? I'm 60. My life's almost over. And she just looks at me and she goes, how are you going to feel if you don't? And I was like, oh,
put it in the challenge.
Just right there. Yank my blankets right off. Right. Yeah. And I was like, okay, yeah, because I have to. It's like, for me, it's become kind of a calling. Yeah. But at the same time, to what we're talking about, I don't want to be, that alone guy that does all this stuff and doesn't. It's not that I don't enjoy my life. Yeah. I do enjoy my life. But I also want my life to be full. And I think that includes, having a romantic relationship with someone who trusts you and who you trust. And I just haven't been able to get myself to do it. You know what I mean? I haven't been able to get myself to do it because to me, it seems so threatening.
Yeah.
Like the 4-step, when you're talking about that, like I wouldn't do the 4-step either until finally Milton just goes, dude, write down everything, take an hour, write down everything that makes you cringe. And I was like, oh, and I did. And he goes, now, don't you think about this all the time? I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm always thinking about that keeps me from looking people in the eye and keeps me separate from people. And he goes, yeah, that's why we have to get it out. And I've done way more thorough ones since then,
right.
But that's what it took. Like if he hadn't done that for me and just said an hour, I might not have ever done one. I might not be sober right now.
Yep.
but he made it easy for me, so.
Chunk it up.
Yeah.
I had two things to that. One that I've said a lot. That was a big turning point for me. One of the OGs in my home group. I was only there after I'd joined I was there for like 6 months. He turned to me, and he was like homeless for 10 years, and he has like 30 years now. He's like just a gangster. Turned his whole life around. And he was like, "You never look anyone in the eye," and no one had ever said that to me. And I was like, "What the fuck?" that for whatever reason that hit big time, and that also coincided with me redoing the steps with my sponsor here. But then I had that ability after that. The other thing I was going to say was, it's interesting you talked about the 20-year-old, talking with her. I was just at a meeting, I think on Sunday, where someone was saying that they had 32 years, and they asked someone that they met in a meeting with like 6 years to sponsor them because they were on fire with their recovery, and like they wanted what they had, and like they said it was like the most like refreshing, just like relit their recovery on fire, because they had a bunch of sponsees and like all that stuff. And I've been interested in that too before. Just like some of the guys in my meeting have 30, 40 years, and they talk a lot about like just having to be careful to balance that line of like, I know things, always speaking from like, I'm just telling you what my experience is and my suggestions. Because once you start saying, I know, our ego will click right back in, it's like, it's a fast.
I got that. I got this, that's a dangerous phrase.
It is.
And I'm with that. I don't think time matters.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
If you're not doing what you need to do for the daily reprieve.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's way more important. Like, what's your program like?
Yeah. Well, I was blessed when I was in treatment. There was a lady in there when I was still unsure about what the hell was going on. And she had 27 years. And she was in a 12-step program, 27 years clean and sober. Got into a fight with her daughter one night, went to the liquor store, got a DUI. And she came into treatment. And like, I learned, and I do learn so much from hearing other people's stories. I really try to like put myself into it as much as I can and try to understand their experience to the best that I can. And just meeting her was such a blessing, because I would have thought, and even now, like, it was just good to see that it's good. I think it's safe to have a safe fear of relapse, or a safe fear of that always being a possibility. Try to avoid using definite terms such as like, I'll never relapse, I'm good now, or, anything like that is huge red flags. I've told my friends that, if I ever say like, I think I'm good, I think I beat it, I like to say that, and you share that your dad did, like, dying sober is the only way to win, if you want to put it in a win-lose thing. So yeah,
that's kind of my goal.
Yeah.
It's like, I look at it and go, okay, that's, as far as achievements or goals or whatever, I don't really have that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I do hope that I stay sober until I pass.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be soon.
No, me neither.
Yeah. So it's not a challenge, but
right,
you know what I mean? But I do feel I want to honor my father. I want to honor my father in that way.
That's beautiful.
And just be that guy that there was. Again, I'm so blessed. There was this guy named Harry who had like 54 years at Mario's, and he was there every day. He had cancer, and he was going to UCLA. I guess it was a very painful kind of cancer, and they were trying to convince him to take morphine. And he was like, "No, I'm not doing it." He goes, "There's pain. I can deal with pain. I can't deal with not being sober." And he would say, and this was so helpful to me. I can't even tell you how helpful this was to me, Mitch. He said that, he's decided he's going to drink again. And he said, I'm going to put some brandy in my orange juice first thing tomorrow. You know what I mean? And he goes, and I can tell myself that every single day, because tomorrow never gets here. But what I'm doing is I'm giving myself permission. You know what I mean? So I tell people all the time, you don't have to not drink forever.
Right.
And I look at it this way myself. Yeah, when I've been so upset in sobriety, I'd be like, you know what? I mean, I lost custody of my daughter. She moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've had some upsets in sobriety. And every time I'll be like, that's it, I'm getting completely fucked up. I'm just going to wait till tomorrow to do it. And then I sleep and I wake up and I go, okay, What do I have to do today to make this day work? And if I'm still upset, I give myself permission to get fucked up again, just tomorrow, right? Because if I say to myself, I have to stay sober forever, I'm an alcoholic. I'm defiant. I'm going to prove you wrong. You know what I mean? I'm going to show you. When I say you, I mean me.
I hear you.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and my bigger fear than relapse is being unhappy. You know, just having an unhappy, alone life. And you know, I mean, I'm so busy with people. You know, I don't have that at the moment, and I love it. You know, I'm
beautiful,
super stoked. I'm always surrounded by people who are trying to live on this path too. Which is really helpful for me. And helpful for them. You know, so it's like we trudge the happy road of destiny, or however you say it, together, and that's what makes it work.
I completely agree. Even the hour today, you know, it's been beautiful talking with you.
Has it been an hour?
I know, we ripped through that.
Oh shit, dude.
Yeah. But it's been amazing talking with you. I hate to cut us off, but yeah, beautiful experience. Thank you for talking and sharing with me, man. I love getting into some of the nitty gritty stuff. It's always like really, really fun.
There's a lot of it. There's a lot of it. And I'll tell you, in the course of the 22 years I've been sober, stuff comes up where I'm just like, oh, I completely forgot about that. You know, and I'll be like, damn. So they continue your journey, man.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you to everyone listening. This has been episode 61 with Skip. Thank you to the Vic James Center for sponsoring this episode. And thank you to Nova for producing and editing this episode. And real quick, wanted to talk about on November 12th from 3 to 6 p.m., the Vic James Center is hosting their annual fundraiser. There's going to be food, chips, merch, music, smiles. It's going to be a lot of fun. We will see you there. We'll have the address and details linked below. So thank you very much again, Skip. Appreciate you.
My pleasure.
We'll keep coming back.
And you got that ad perfectly.
Thanks, sir.
No problem.
Oh, man. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, bro. That was awesome.
Hell yeah.